Welcome to TeachMeAuto.com. Today Greg and I are going to show you how to replace the Serpentine belt, the belt tensioner, and the idler pulley on this 2002 Dodge Grand Caravan Sport.
The Serpentine belt plays a critical role in the operation of your vehicle. This one belt controls the air conditioner, the alternator, the power steering pump, and the water pump. So it's vital that you inspect and replace when necessary to prevent any major damage if it should break.
Yeah. This whole process takes us about an hour. So you ready to get started on it, man?
Let's go. First, we remove the front passenger side tire to have easy access to the Serpentine belt. Before we lift the vehicle, we need to loosen up the lug nuts just a little bit. Next, we need to find a secure place under the vehicle to place the jack. Once we have the vehicle safely off the ground, we need to put a jack stand under the frame. In this location, be careful of the AC lines. Now with the vehicle on jack stands, we need to go ahead and remove all the lug nuts and then remove the tire. Then we need to remove the splash shield. The splash shield is held on by one bolt and 3 plastic fasteners. To remove the bolt, we need a 10mm socket and ratchet. To remove the plastic fasteners, we use a pair of needle nose pliers to get up on them and twist them out. Do not worry about damaging these plastic fasteners as they're readily available at most any auto parts store for around $1. Now with the splash shield out of the way, we have access to the belt tensioner. To adjust the belt tensioner, we use a 19mm or 3/4 inch wrench and push up on it. Once we have the tension off the belt, we can remove it from the engine. Now it's time to remove the idler pulley. We found it easiest to come in from the bottom using a 15mm socket and ratchet. Once it's loose, remove the bolt by hand. Once the bolt is removed, slide the idler pulley out. Now it's time to remove the belt tensioner. This is the tab we used to remove the tension on the belt earlier. To remove the tensioner, we use a 13mm wrench. Once the bolt's removed, we slide the tensioner out. Now that we've removed the Serpentine belt, the idler pulley, and the belt tensioner, let's go over the differences between the new parts and the old parts. First, let's talk about the idler pulley. You'll notice that the sleeve on the old one is larger than the one in the new one. Since they both fit in the same way, we'll go ahead and use the new one. Now, let's look at the belt tensioners. You'll notice there's 2 different tensioners that we were able to buy from 2 different local auto parts stores. The first one looks almost identical to the old one, except it's missing the tab here that we used to relieve pressure on the belt so we could remove it. Here's the tab right here that we used, and you notice this one doesn't have one there. Now you notice the other tensioner that we found has a tab, but it's much bigger than the original. This one allows you to insert a 1/2 inch ratchet, which will allow you to get even more leverage when you're adjusting the tension on your belt. This is actually a Gates part number 38185. It also comes with a new bolt, which we highly recommend using. Now let's look at the old belt. If you'll notice, it has these cracks and pits mainly from age. This belt definitely needs to be replaced. Now it's time to put in place our new idler pulley. When you get it in place, tighten up the bolt by hand as far as you can, then finish tightening it with a 15mm socket and ratchet or a box end wrench. Now it's time to install the belt tensioner. Make sure as you're lining it up, the tab on the back of the tensioner aligns with the hole in the block. Once the tensioner is in place, insert the bolt and tighten it up by hand. Now the new bolt requires an 11mm wrench to tighten it all the way up.
It's time for us to install our new Serpentine belt. For the belt routing, all we got to do is refer to the sticker that's under the hood that tells us the belt routing.
Now it's time to install our new belt. First, we push the belt up in front of the engine. Now we'll go across the pulley for the alternator. Make sure the grooves on the belt go into the grooves on the alternator. Then we're going to go around the idler. Make sure the flat side of the belt goes against the idler. Now just make sure at this point that you just kind of follow the directions on the front of the engine for your particular engine. And the very last thing we're going to do is release the tension on the belt tensioner and slide it around the crankshaft.
Now it's time for us to put our splash guard back in place. We just slide it into position.
Now let's install our plastic fasteners. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. Then we'll install our bolt. Remember, it requires a 10mm socket and ratchet. It's time to put our tire back on. Line up the holes in the wheels with the studs on the van. Once it's in place, put the lug nuts on. Once all the lugs are on, tighten up the lugs with a ratchet. Now we'll lower the vehicle back onto the ground. First we'll lift the vehicle up and remove the jack stands. Then we lower the vehicle back on the ground. Make sure the lug nuts are good and tight. We hope this video will help you change the serpentine belt, idler pulley, and belt tensioner on your 2002 Dodge Grand Caravan Sport.
Yeah, you know, Greg, this probably take the average person about an hour to change the belt tensioner, and the idler pulley out. And it was nice to have an extra pair of hands to help out, especially when it come time to put the new belt on. Now, although removing the tire wasn't absolutely necessary, it sure was nice having that extra room under there to work with.
It sure was. And thank you for visiting us at teachmeall.com. Your comments are always welcomed and appreciated. So please send us an email at comments@teachmeall.com and have a great day.